It's time. It's time to kick off.
Pay attention.
Yeah, exactly. Pay attention.
You actually stop sometimes. That's news to me.
Okay, so welcome everyone to the third AMA that we will be recording and putting on YouTube. Today's main topic is to try and answer some of the questions that came up following the village drop. Just for those who don't know, Chris wasn't here during that first village drop, but he was the one that obviously helped code, design, plan it. It was all prepped and ready before it went, so he is fully aware of everything. When we'll be going through these questions, we've had a lot of questions. We've had, I would say, close to 100. Not all of them are coming from Discord. Some of them came from DMs. Some of them came from Facebook. But either way, there are a lot of them. And Chris, before you ask, yes, exactly, I will. So I'm just going to start the AMA, ping everybody, make sure that they all come over. And most of them already know anyway because they've already started joining. So, on that topic, the first question that we've had, obviously, is in response to the villages. So, the villages that dropped last week, with the first one being Millsbury, the whole announcement explained that the villages are being dropped. The ones that were being dropped were very kind of limited. They had some special limitations on how the building would grow to focus a little bit more on scarcity. And the villages will be rolled out over the next 10 weeks, I believe we said, or the next few weeks, but there'll be 10 villages in total. So the questions that we generally tend to have had asked recently are, can you explain a little bit more about the limitations on the buildings, the idea behind the village, and when we can expect the next village out?
Yeah, so I'll start talking a bit about the limited and exclusive names that we gave the buildings, because I think those are relatively easy. I've talked a little bit about it in the in some of the questions section, but we are now in the process of setting up 3 different styles of buildings or types of buildings. When I say styles, I don't mean visual, I mean functional. And the 3 are going to be a standard building, which functions in the same way as all the other buildings in the app do at the moment. We have a limited building, which is a building that can grow, but only to a limited height. And then we have an exclusive building, which is the height it is at the time you see it and spawn, and never grows above that. So in the villages, we had some buildings that were only 2 stories high, or a storefront or ground floor, plus the apartment and penthouse, which are obviously extremely rare and exclusive type of experience within the app. So those appeared, and we also had some buildings out at the back of the village that were limited. So they had a growth that was limited, I believe, to 10 stories. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of the beginning of a whole new type of concept, and one that we're quite excited to see where it goes from there, and how it works with the villages in general as we move forward.
Okay, cool. And with regards to the theming of the different villages, so there's been some confusion around. I think the general expectation was that somewhere along the line, people assumed that the villages would incorporate some of the stuff we've previously talked in the previous AMA. When we say that they're uniquely themed, it's they all have this new cottage skin. And the prop sets that are in the village are different, and they have rooftop props. But particularly, I know that we have limitations when it comes to the skin, the textures on the buildings.
Yeah. I mean, from my point of view, it's similar to the thing Stan says, although more from a technical side, is whenever we do something, and the villages are a very good example of it, we're trying out new technologies, and in many ways we do them specifically to try out new technologies, or we make sure whenever we do something like the villages, we go, right, we need to try out 2 or 3 new things here to see if they work or they don't work. And so there were a lot of visual changes to the villages that you could call new themes if you wanted to or not, but the key things we tried out were implementing a new type of terrain, like the experiments of the parks, and implementing a new kind of skin for villages, and implementing the rooftop props. And yeah, I mean, skins are the main issue with skins is right now, the way the tech works, we have a limited number can fit in the world at once. So we need to write the tech that loads up the skin for the region you're in. But yeah, I mean, I think those were the key technical features we were testing in the villages, unless I've forgotten one.
Yeah, and
the
parks, exactly. One of the things I was going to say is some of the testing has already been noticed by the users. Like, for example, people have identified that the view range within the village isn't as the 2K we previously had, and so other people have noticed that the rooftop props weren't expanding. So this is why these tests have been happening. This is why the village was put in the way that is, so that we can test it. And also the time zones in which we're rolling them out is being tested. We need to be able to obviously give everyone equal opportunities and drop a village at different times and be able to see how well they do, etc. I think the other question about the village is, can you explain a little bit more about how the scarcity has worked, or how we've set up scarcity in these villages in terms of how the cost is calculated?
Sure. I mean, the from a scarcity perspective, we've had a lot of requests over time for buildings that are limited as well as buildings that are unlimited. So one of the things we decided to try with some of the villages was to add this concept of buildings that would never grow. And they were an important experiment because it's not just about making a building that doesn't grow. It's, should it have a different visual style? How should you explain that in the user interface? How should that affect the economy? All sorts of bits and pieces. So, I mean, there's nothing hugely complex about that. They are quite simply buildings that don't grow, and some other buildings in there that can grow but a very limited amount. In terms of the pricing, I mean, I think the short version is that we simply priced those buildings higher, isn't it, Sam? It's not a
yeah, pretty much.
It's not a complex algorithm behind that. Just as a shop will price their premium goods above their non-premium goods, we decided to put a higher price on some of those limited buildings.
I think as well.
Clarify that is something that we've had requested. The idea that there are different places to invest different types of amounts is something that many people have asked about over the first 6 months of the app, and this has delivered towards that.
It's also kind of important to note as well that there's no requirement for everybody to get involved with these village drops. Like, you aren't obligated to take part in when a village drops, or you could wait out and do a player trade, or it's not a case of every time we do an event or every time we do a village drop you have to be involved. So don't feel the obligations.
No, I mean, I think that's an important thing to state, is the goal here isn't to get everybody in a mad rush out there. Those that are interested in what they are, I'm sure there's a lot of people that enjoy being in the villages regardless of whether they own a property. And that's part of what the app should do, is there should be different places for different types of individuals. I mean, if we look at the other apps that do something of this nature, I mean, the pricing of Multiverse is still extremely low by comparison to, for example, Sandbox or other places. So the range of users and the types of users that want to participate and what they want to participate in varies, and we are trying to be inclusive. But we're not creating a whole new world with millions of properties at a higher price or anything of that nature. We are simply playing around with some things, letting people have opportunities to explore and play with those things and join in if they want to.
So I think that's pretty much most of the topics, or most of the important topics that we've been asked over the last week about the villages. But if we've missed anything, feel free to poke us in the AMA chat. But we want to move on to the next topic that we got asked.
I'd like to quickly finish off just with one other thing. A lot of people are asking us about the next village,
yes,
when that's coming and what it's going to be. So just want to set expectations up front. The next village will be coming. We just need to work out some details from this last village launch, and as soon as we've done that, we'll let you know. So we're not going to you will hear the key things are, don't expect the theme, as in the style of the buildings, to change. There will be a different name for the village, and there will be a different set of props and environment for it. But the actual buildings themselves, due to the limitations that Chris was talking about earlier, those won't be changed until potentially later, once we've fixed and resolved the issue of being able to have textures that are relevant to where you are in the world, rather than ones that cover the whole world. So I just wanted to call that out.
Exactly. Okay, so the next topic that came up is the status of the jetpacks, because obviously you have been kind of showing them off a little bit on the Facebook page with some teasers, and you did mention a minute ago you've been flying into Ollie, so people are kind of interested in how they're going to work and what kind of perks we can expect with that.
Perks with the jetpacks?
Yes.
Well, perks with the... Well, I'm going to say, would it be the perks of the jetpacks are awesome jetpacks. Do you mean how the jetpacks are going to work?
Yeah, like how they function and why do people want to buy a jetpack? That's the point.
Yeah. People want to buy a jetpack because jetpacks are awesome.
Great.
I think partly. I mean, they allow you to fly over the world and see everything from a different point of view. Get from A to B quicker, but we're also going to add some gameplay surrounding jetpacks as well. So we're probably going to introduce things like checkpoint races across the rooftops and stuff like that to actually introduce some fun into the world. And try and get some high score tables in there or something like that, so you can
oh gosh,
see how you're doing relative to other people.
I can already envisage the competitiveness of this community will get completely out of hand already, and I look forward to watching tournaments for jetpacks.
Yeah, well, especially if you can bump into each other, right? Like
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the experiences I've had in them, I know, Chris, you have a mild sense of nausea when experiencing things with this sort of emotion, but I'm loving them. I do have a very, very minor sense of nausea if I spend too long in them, without the frame showable and without the vignette. What's interesting is that when you see the video where I show off the vignette, it looks like it's massive. When you're in the app and you're actually, flying around, it's relatively subtle. But it does help massively from a nausea point of view. And it is a lot of fun to zoom really fast along a street. I know people claim that I'm very good at running fast with teleportations and using both buttons of both hands.
Yep.
And I am pretty good at that, but this is faster, easier, and a hell of a lot more fun. I have worked out that lampposts are, however, a bit of a challenge, because they do mysteriously appear in front of you and stop you suddenly in your tracks. So that's a thing that burnout coders might want to think about.
Yeah, I was going to say, if that happened, that would probably cause me more motion sickness than anything else.
Yeah, no, they're a lot of fun. The joy of going up across the buildings and being able to explore the areas, or even the drops. Some of the drops that we've got, those city drops, that's just stunning to be able to fly around and get a really good view of, as opposed to having to, I guess, stack socially all the way up to the top to find a place and then realize actually you wanted to be 20 meters further to the left or the right. I mean, I'm really, really enjoying them, and the visuals that Marco has done on the jetpacks are brilliant. Yeah. I think we've even added in some animation, and I really, really enjoy them. So I'm very much looking forward to getting those out.
Yeah, I think this is one of Marco's favorite projects to him to be working on, because he seems to have really put a lot of variety in it, and he's really excited about it. One of the things that I wanted. Sorry.
On that note, just want to mention that the time frame for them, even though right now they are usable and we can go through the world on them and have a lot of fun with them, I wouldn't expect them to appear straight away, because we do want to do the gameplay, and we want to do the how you get access to them. We want to make sure that those are working properly before we launch them to the public. So even though they might look like they're ready to ship, they're not quite. So please be a little bit patient with us while we nail this first round.
Yeah, for sure. A question that we have had from kind of left over from the last AMA, and someone wanted to know how things are going with how we are planning to go out and do I think it was the changes to the like monorail system. What was it called? No, the metro system. Sorry, I keep calling it the monorail because it's in the back of my head all the time. I've been watching too much Simpsons. But yeah, they wanted to know if they're going to do any more with the metro stops or add any more metro stops.
The metro stops will get more love.
Yeah.
We've had so many things to give love that they've just fallen down the list repeatedly. But they will be given a lot more love. They will first be made to work.
Mm-hmm.
They will secondly be put in more places.
Yep.
And then we are thinking about things like monorails, and I don't know if the monorail would be linked to the metro stations or whether it would be a separate thing. But there will be a cool mass transit system in the Infiniverse, and the metros will be part of that.
Mm-hmm.
They've just, there's a massive list, and every time something important came up, they slipped a little bit further down that list.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a good point that you raised about the mass transit system, and also having monorails as similar to almost like the jetpacks. It could be another type of utility. Have we kind of had any thoughts on that? Any other plans for more than just jetpacks?
Definitely. I mean, I think there's definitely a load of utility things we can add that are there for fun. So, I mean, we've already had things like jet skis mentioned, kind of obviously. I'd quite like to add, it's a small thing, but years and years ago, there was some Star Wars MMO I played where half of what people did was just setting off fireworks, and people loved it.
Yeah.
I'd love to have a fireworks stall in there, but I don't know, you've probably got a lot more crazy producer ideas, Sam. Have you got a list I don't know about yet?
Yeah, I'm not sure I dare say them with you in the room, but yeah, we've got crazy things on the list. I mean, to be simple, there's going to be things that you can do that are gameplay related, ranging from jetpacks to boats to scooters to jet skis to grappling hooks to jumping. All of these sorts of things are in the list of things we're considering. Jumping boots to be able to fly over buildings, or other mechanics. I've seen a great VR demo that somebody did of a Superman experience, where by pushing your hands forward with your grip buttons down, you fly like Superman massively fast through the sky. So there's a whole load of things of that nature that we could get into that would be fun. I don't think that we want to make any decisions on which of those we are going to add, because I think we want to be able to do both. We want to have the gameplay, we want to have functionality. The great thing about jetpacks is they do both. They have a real functional value, and they can be a lot of fun to be in. And if we can do things that do both, great, but we would probably do a little bit of one and the other. Something else that was mentioned was boom boxes or other things that create more social environments, places where you can be together around something. I don't know, maybe even a disco ball, something of that nature, where you can actually bring stuff in and place it. And I think that's another area that we'll see as we get forward with these. If we do these things as what are they called? Utilities for buildings, then we want to find a way of making sure that people can join socially together with different building functioning utilities and have a party together, because, oh wow, you've got this and I've got that, and together we can build this, do that together as a result. I think those sorts of things are going to be a lot of fun. And I think that there's probably a lot more that we'll get to as we enable more, more functionality in the open world. So at the moment, I think this is sort of a nice segue to probably one of your next points.
Yeah.
Chris has been working a lot recently on this open world terrain. So we've got mountains and hills. And you've probably seen some of the sneak peeks that we've been putting out there of the water that's going to be coming back.
Yeah, the lakes.
And side area where between cities and around villages and areas, we have a concept in the code of what is a countryside. And countryside is where we've lost those lakes. So the lakes that did disappear were all in the area that the app considered countryside. We're about to bring countryside lakes back in. But again, that's still just one very small step towards a future vision of a world that you can explore and play around and have fun in. that's going to be much vaster and bigger than just walking around and buying apartments or walking around and shopping in storefronts. So the world that we're going to build is going to be one that's going to be beautiful, exciting, interesting, have depth and exploration, and a whole load of actions that you can take. And the utilities that we'll be bringing will probably be partly devised from the sort of content that we put out there for people to explore and to find.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can imagine compasses that point you towards things.
Yeah.
In fact,
Someone's already said it a minute ago. Jet skis for the lakes that we're making. That would be great.
Yes.
Yeah. Or if we had caves, torches, right?
You're obsessed with these caves. You really want caves being added. It's amazing.
You have somebody dragons, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're determined to put a dragon in a cave.
Caves are just incredibly technically difficult. That's just they're a technical challenge, an aspiration, put it that way. Caves.
Aim high.
Yeah, so I want to ditch all of these useful features that everybody's excited about and just work on caves for the next month. That's why we have a producer.
Exactly.
That kind of thing happening.
Yes.
Yeah, the idea of creating a world that is interesting to be in and not just, buildings, I think is a key part of what we're going to be working towards.
Mm-hmm.
And as we do, cool technical features, not like caves, but for example, like imposters, which Chris can maybe talk a little bit about, we will get to the point where we can have things like forests and we can have trees across that wilderness and we can have, flowers and we can have a whole load of different things that make it beautiful.
Just to clarify,
make it
when you say imposters, because a lot of people aren't familiar with that term, like people are instantly thinking of Among Us. Like imposters is essentially a way of kind of less detailed generating a further viewpoint so that it doesn't consume so much memory or technology on your headset and make it lag and delay. So
you just put lots of words in a sentence there.
Come on.
Imposters are they are a technology. They're an approach to letting you do things like forests, where from a distance you need to be able to see tens of thousands of trees, and up close you can fake that by only drawing the few trees that are nearby and a bit of blurry stuff in the distance. But when you're on one hill looking down the hill over a valley that's covered in trees, you need a technique for rendering them that's convincing, that can show 10,000 trees, and that's what imposters are. I have no idea where the name came from. It was probably from Half-Life or something, because they named most things, but it's not a type of NPC basically.
One of the points that I wanted to kind of bring up, mainly because the imposters and the terminology of it is an example of where things are getting a bit lost in translation, is kind of us taking a moment to actually explain what pre-beta means, because there are a lot of people in this community that aren't gamers. There are a lot of people who haven't really got a grasp of what pre-beta means in comparison to other apps, other games, and what they should be expecting with a pre-beta game, what a beta game is, and what a launched game is. So if you could explain so that we can add a bit of clarity, that'd be great.
I mean, I do think these terms mean something different for every developer with every game they release. I can tell you what it means to me. What it basically comes down to is that we've said many times, we're trying to build the metaverse, and the metaverse contains a huge number of features. So there's so many things that we don't know how they should work, not because we haven't made them, because the world doesn't know how they should work yet. And San and I believed from the start that multiverse is something that should be built with the people that will be using it, not built and then given to the people that will be using it. So I guess pre-beta is the phrase we used to try and communicate that we've made the base platform and now we're building the experience, and it's not finished, and so we're building it with you. And that means you get to see all of the dirty insides, an application has during that development process as these things are being flushed out, which is a down, but at the same time you get to influence how it evolves and what it turns into, which is very rare in the games industry.
Yeah. I was going to say that most games that I'm aware of, they don't they don't have open access to pre-beta stuff. You have to be invited, and you have to have a certain spec of a machine, and you have to meet the requirements of the people that they want to have come and play on their game whilst it's in that building phase. So I'm very surprised that your app is so open to everyone at such an early stage. And yeah, I don't think a lot of people grasp that very easily.
No, I mean, but it's also a little bit our own fault. I mean, when we launched Infiniverse, we did it in a secret part of Multiverse in the dev zone as a secret door to a pre-beta room. And we just found that people were flooding in regardless of the fact that we'd hidden it. So we had a very different idea of what we were going to be expecting at launch than what it's turned into be, which is both good and bad. You know, it's fantastic that we've got this many people involved, but it does also mean that we have, like you say, people that don't necessarily aren't familiar with the gaming world of betas and pre-betas or alphas or whatever you want to call them. And there are expectations which are understandable of, you know, what we're going to achieve and when we're going to achieve it and why isn't it all day yesterday and why do things break, which is fair enough. You know, there's no comment on that. But at the same time, that is what the pre-beta means. That is why we launched it in pre-beta, was to work with the community to build something that is hopefully going to be amazing. Pretty much already is in many ways.
Yeah, exactly. One question that I've seen pop up today is, I mean, obviously it is in pre-beta, but are we able to talk about any UI changes, any tools that could come out to help us navigate the metaverse a little bit better? I know that it's been extremely popular of a request to talk about having the ability to bookmark locations or bookmark friends, or being able to make it easier to go from point A to B quickly without having to click on the people button, and also fixing the people button so that you aren't just limited to that 24 square blocks of people who's online. Are any of these changes coming at all?
There's a lot of different questions in there. I'll let Chris tackle some of them. There are a couple that I'd like to just call out. First, we acknowledge that some of those things are broken, and one of the consequences of building an app that expands exponentially during a really short period of time is that systems that worked fail and stop working in the future. So we now need to, you know, level up those things and make sure that when we do a proper update to things like the rooms list or the people's list or the friends list or whatever other list it is, that it's forward compatible with where we can see this is headed, as opposed to, you know, what it was built for initially, which was the planetarium and a set of very limited rooms. I think we had about 80 of them. Last count I did earlier this month, there was 638,000 locations within Multiverse. So the things that were built for a specific system do creak and break, and Chris is very much aware of it, as the code team, and they're looking at it. I'll let Chris talk about how and when and what we're going to do from a point of view of those things. But there is something else which is really coming, and we are looking very seriously at a new system for navigating all the various different bits of content, ranging from storefronts to metaverses to people to friends to rooms to well, pretty much, yeah, apartments for sale, everything, and finding a way to do that in a cohesive, comprehensible, and familiar manner. We will be bringing something out within the next, you know, reasonable amount of time that will start to implement that and will only continue to get better. And that will make a significant change to the whole structure and the experience, how you find stuff, how you save stuff, how you explore stuff, and yeah, that we are very much aware of. We know it needs fixing, but it needs fixing properly rather than just sort of like.
Just to kind of reiterate that point, you've specifically taken a dev on to do this. So you have someone currently working on this topic specifically. So
it's been in development for months, and that is something that, again, we will launch before it's entirely 100% finished, but that first iteration will be a huge step up from what we've had to date. Chris, do you want to take that any further?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of harks back to what you were saying before, San. We designed the wrist menu as a shortcut for accessing a world that, often being able to see 20 people online at once was perfectly reasonable. There was 80 odd rooms, so being able to see the 20 that people were in, that worked fine. But really, the wrist menu was initially always designed to be a shortcut for accessing a small set of interesting content. So what we're working on now is the wrist menu's bigger brother, the main larger menu for navigating the metaverse, which will have, I mean, the features you would expect from any modern system that has a large amount of content that you need to find your way around. It's not rocket science. It just takes time to write and time to polish and get usable. The last thing we want to do is release a new means of navigation that's a bit broken and doesn't work properly and just ends up being a different thing for people to be annoyed with.
And also, just to clarify, that does include being able to more easily navigate the storefronts.
In its current state, it allows you to search for storefronts, events that are on now or may be coming. It allows you to search for properties that are on sale, or your own properties. We'll obviously get things like your friends lists in there, and I suspect the mechanisms for pinning and favoriting things will be heavily tied into it as well.
That's great. I mean, I know personally that it's something that we want to do right. We've previously said this in the previous AmA. It's better that we take the time and do it right than spend extra time trying to keep on fixing it. So yeah, this is one of the more important features that the community has been asking us for a long time.
Yep. 100%.
Another question that we have had recently that I think we kind of need to definitively make a full this is how it is we've had this confusion around the selling of apartments and the transaction fees, how they're calculated, etc. There have been a few rumors implying that it's always at the high end and never at the low end. So really just wanted to take time for you to kind of give us insight as to what's happening with the transaction fees, how they all work together, including the 4 times penthouse. How does it work?
So there's several different elements to this. I mean, the economy algorithms are complex. Let's just say that out there. And it's not possible to. There's not like a little bit of maths you can do on a bit of paper to work out how much X will cost, because everything affects everything else to such a large degree. But there's some specific things in there that we can explain. The sell now price, I think, is the first one that causes a lot of confusion. The core algorithm for sell now is that you will currently be charged, you could call it be charged. The offer we will make will be somewhere between 0% and 30% less than the value we assign to the property. Where it sits in that varies over time. So if you come back to the same property a day later, you will probably find that percentage has changed. Of course, that can be quite hard to track because another property 100 meters away may have been purchased or sold, which will have changed the value of your property as well. That is how it works. I have checked and double checked and triple checked, and I've taken the screenshots of people that are concerned and verified those exact situations and made sure it all works properly. And let me say, to date, I have neither been shown nor seen myself a situation in which that code is functioning correctly. The one thing that I think has caused confusion is that there are still properties around that do not have that additional cost applied. because when we introduced it many a month ago, we said that any properties that were currently owned by somebody, we wouldn't suddenly apply this charge to them. So they still exist, and that can cause a bit of confusion as well. But that is how Sell Now works. It is how it has always worked, how it will continue to work. The 4 times multiplier, this is basically how do we value a penthouse, and indeed, there's similar maths for how do we value an apartment, based on how we evaluate the economy at a certain point in the world. We decided to increase the valuation of penthouses because we wanted the valuation of them to match how we felt the community valued them, and the community valued them by more than 50% of the cost of the apartment, clearly. But again, we have to make sure that when we introduce a change like that, we don't suddenly either flood the market with an additional vast number of metacoins or flood people with an additional sudden cost. So penthouses that were owned by somebody when we introduce this change in valuation will, they keep that original valuation until they've been sold back to us, and the price effectively gets reset. Which, yeah, again, in many ways, I would like it to be simpler, but just as you can't simplify the stock market to make it easier to understand, we cannot. There are aspects there that we cannot just simplify without fundamentally breaking the economy. That's why those rules work the way they do, but they do work. I have checked and double checked and checked again because it matters so much. And I review that code on a regular basis, even when it's not changed, just in case some part of my brain missed something last time, and coming back to it a few days later, I'll spot it.
Yeah.
But it works.
And
basically.
And also to highlight the point that you made earlier, which is the main idea, the main point around why these changes have happened is to discourage the selling back to us, or the sell now. It is meant to be player to player.
Yeah, I mean, Sell Now exists because people currently need a way to keep the economy cycling over, and I kind of see it very much as when land is originally made available back a few hundred years ago, when a place was empty and people could pick up that land. The trading worked very differently, but the idea is, as we've always said, to make ourselves redundant. An economy cannot function when there's one single entity in there that most of the economy is based around, that will always accept a sellback to that entity. A real world stable economy just can't function that way. So Sell Now will fade out eventually. That's the way it has to be. But yeah, the goal is to be a player-to-player trading thing, just like anything else in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Did you have anything to add on that?
I'd like to drop in on that one. One is, there are very few other scenarios in the world where you get to sell back to the person that you bought from. And it was very much something that was relevant at the beginning more than it is now, and will become less relevant with time. The idea that the app has that sellback is, it's not relevant to anybody, and especially for those people that are looking to make a ROI on their purchases, it's not going to be a situation that will provide that. Whereas if you look at being able to play player-to-player trade, that has a future, that has a length, viability, and an economy stability that is valuable. So within our minds, Chris and I have always imagined that by the time we get out of this pre-beta stage into a proper live app, the Sell Now won't be there. There will be other functions and other solutions, ranging from potentially auctions and bids and other things that matter more and provide people with a more valid way of achieving the results they want. But the Sell Now is probably going to be phased out. Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting world that we're heading towards with that, especially when we think about some of the future potential opportunities that are coming to us, and where the app will be and which platforms it will be within the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of, I suppose it always comes down to kind of defining where value comes from. And value comes from what the community makes of it. And it's not, it should not be dependent on what we put in, where it also comes from the efforts communities make in the app, the effort players make in their apartments, etc.
I think that's a really important thing to reiterate, Nikki, and thanks for bringing it up. You know, the idea that there is value here is from everybody else. It's not from us. We're creating the platform, and we're letting other people generate the value, whether it's the storefronts, whether it's the creation of a light city, whether it's whatever it is that people are doing, whether it's Dope Show and his Dope Shows, or whether it's people generating, you know, whole districts of certain types of experiences. Those things are the things that ultimately will define the value of the properties around them, and the people that have made an effort and taken the time to generate those areas of value, those are the people that will benefit the most in the long term. And that's something that we can't stress enough. You know, it really has to be a world that is defined by the people that make the effort, take the time, and put in the passion to generate this world that we're building with you.
Yeah, I think you made the point right from the very beginning, right when the majority of this started joining, which is you aren't the ones creating the value. You're just providing the tools, and that's how it will always be. And I think
we provide the tools. You guys create the value.
Exactly. I think that also comes nicely into the question that somebody asked with regards to the storefronts. Are there any kind of changes that you're going to have to the storefronts that could help them? So changing the door pictures from the inside that came up recently, being able to have different countertops, more customization, changing the music in the storefront, or having more control over the music in the storefront, being able to just make it a little bit more suit the aesthetic of what they're trying to put in the storefront.
I'll jump in, Chris, but there are a lot of different points there. And ultimately, over the coming months, one of the key focuses of myself and Dora is going to be on looking to how we can help users generate a return on investment for their storefronts. That to us is a very powerful and important feature, and something that we want to work with all of you to achieve. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us, talk to us, explain to us what it is you need. We can't guarantee that we will be implementing everybody's wish list feature, but we are looking at how we can support you in achieving that. The opportunities available to people that want to create content or storefronts and sell stuff, those are relatively vast and unique. With the opportunities that we have of putting events onto the Oculus App Store, we're providing all of you with a unique and massive opportunity to target users on a millions of level. Tens of millions of people sit with an Oculus app on their phone, and they scroll through the list of events and they look at what they want to sign up to and join and participate in. And at the moment, I'm not sure that those are being taken advantage of to the extent that they could be.
Yeah.
We need to help people do that, but we also need to find the people out there that want those things, that want that exposure, and how they want to generate environments that mean that we can bring people to them, direct people at them, and make sure that they get a return on investment. That is a very big part of what we will be doing over the future months. And I'm going to be here to talk to people about how we can assist, how we can help, what we imagine they can do to achieve success.
I think as well, one of the biggest pulls about the Infiniverse is that exposure, the amount of people that they could potentially reach. And with that in mind, one of the questions that came up recently was, how are we going to expand that exposure? Are we going to think about maybe progressing to other platforms? What plans do you have?
Well, obviously other platforms. I think that's going to come, and we are definitely going to be delivering other platforms in the future, and not just other VR platforms. I'm going to leave it at that for this AMA, because we're already 45 minutes in, and this could be a deep rabbit hole to go down. But yes, you can expect us to be on non-VR platforms. In other words, 2D platforms at some point in the future. Now, having said that, I'd like to go back to that point you made about the exposure. If you think about the number of people and the cost that it would take to otherwise advertise to that number of people on, for example, Facebook, the people that you can target with a user-generated event within Multiverse or Infiniverse is massive. And the cost of being able to reach out to that many people on Instagram or Facebook or some other platform is vast. So that's something I'd really like to, work with all of you to try and make the most of, is how do we get you the right type of exposure so that you draw in the right type of people so that you can make more of a profit and more out of whether it's monetary or whether it's exposure or whether it's something else. There is a reason for having a storefront, and we want to help you achieve the results of that reason. When we move to other platforms, that's going to extend and be even larger. So we want to make sure that we've nailed that with MetaQuest and the Meta platform first, but we want to do that across all those platforms. You can only imagine the scale, the size, the potential reach once we do that.
Yeah. Chris, did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, I mean, I think I would only be echoing San there. I think that's the key thing is the VR market is great and growing, but it's not. But the market as a whole, when you start to include PCs with 2D interfaces and other platforms, is orders of magnitude larger. And ultimately, when you're talking about ROIs that are based on the number of eyeballs that see your content, that means that the ROIs grow by orders of magnitude as well. It's quite simple on that front. There's some nice, pleasant, simple maths.
Maths isn't pleasant or simple. Only to you, Chris.
On another note, yeah, we are going to be looking at doing more storefronts. I believe Wendy's been working on one recently. We're also going to be looking at talking with people about the types of things they want storefronts to be, what their value is, how we can deliver that. And one pet peeve that I know a lot of people have is obviously the music that plays in the storefront, which can clash with the music or the audio they want to play in their own storefront. I'll just explain that very quickly because it isn't entirely obvious why it happens, but the Infiniverse has an audio track and the Infiniverse sits outside of the storefront. So the Infiniverse audio track plays into the storefront within Infiniverse. And that's where the clash comes from. We will be finding a solution for that. You will be finding an opportunity to be able to place your own music in there or place even your storefront music out into Infiniverse, which is something I know Chris has talked about quite a lot. But imagine walking down the street and not necessarily smelling freshly baked bread, but at least hearing whatever it is that you walk past the storefront and what the storefront is trying to sell. That sort of sense of vibe, whether it's chit chat or whether it's a specific theme song or something else, who knows? Those sorts of things are going to be quite exciting. And I think going to be very powerful for adding a sense of feel to hustle and bustle of the world and the environment that we're in.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to kind of have an extra layer of immersion with all of that. I think audio cues are definitely a big one when it comes to fully being able to feel like you're in a new area. And there is something about hearing birds in my living room that just kind of doesn't make sense. So I'll be looking forward to being able to control the music in my storefront. Yeah. But one of the things that I wanted to just quickly mention is because this question keeps coming up every AMA, and I just wanted to tell people who are asking it now. With regards to the voice control, we've already explained in the last AMA, we are limited by the technology available to us from Meta. There's more information, more detailed explanation, but the general gist of it is we want to fix it. We can't fix it at the moment because of the tech we have. But I know that we're trying to figure out another way, and this new system we've just mentioned will help tremendously with being able to navigate. So voice control, we know it needs to be fixed. Please go listen to the other AMA. With regards to friends and blocking people, somebody recently highlighted a very good point, which is, do we have the ability to block somebody from being able to see you if you block them? So kind of like a two-way blockage system. So if you are being harassed or attacked, or you just don't feel comfortable around a certain person, do we have plans for that?
Yes, yeah. Yes, that's clearly what it should do.
Yeah.
Basically, without a doubt, there's not a more simple answer. Is that is what it should do, and yeah, absolutely, we need to make it. The point of blocking somebody is to make it that they can't interact with you and you can't interact with them, and that's what we'll be trying to make it do.
Yeah, I'm glad, because I know right now when people get reported, that people are usually just blocked or moved, if they are generally being a nuisance. So having that would, I think, add an extra layer of safety for people who are either targets for whatever reason or just constantly want to just be alone. Because I know we have safe mode, but I know the trials and tribulations of trying to be in safe mode and talk to someone quickly. I mean, it kind of happens because I have this big badge above my head, so kind of makes it harder for me to walk around and not be harassed. But I choose that life. One of the other questions that we've been having is about the events. I think now that the type of events that we put out are drop based, predominantly, there's a kind of requests of how we should go about putting him into the world. Do we do them silently like we did before, or do we put an event up and tell people something's coming? I think we're never going to please everyone with that. I think the point to reiterate again is us doing these drops shouldn't be the main event focus. We are just putting stuff in to help test stuff. It's not always about just plonking something in that looks pretty. There's usually a reason for us putting something in a particular area or doing something in a certain way. So, for example, this weekend, there is a type of thing that's being added that may fall apart. It might not fall apart. I know right now that some of the artists are trying desperately to make sure it doesn't fall apart, but it is a drop with a purpose. It needs to be tested, and there are plenty of other events from the community as well.
There's many different values to an event or a drop or things like that, and they're not always obvious to everybody. So I'm just going to run through a couple so that you get a sense of the sort of things that are jumping around in our heads when we do these drops. I mean, one is we want to have reasons for new people to come into the app, and putting some event up on the Oculus Store means that new people see it, they get excited by it, they come and join the app. We've seen a direct correlation to new people downloading the app and coming in for those reasons. So they do have value to everybody. If you have a storefront, more people coming into the app is a great way. If you own a property, you want more people in the app because it's more likely that the value of your property is going to go up. So having an event where people come and join is valuable. Another one is, for example, the village. And we had a lot of different things we were testing. Parks were a part of it. We've created this new tech. When I say we, I mean Chris, but we've created this new tech where we've got a park and it's got sort of rolling hills, it's got trees, it's got a little lake in it and a thing in the middle. Now that's a relatively complex set of content and a lot of polygons, and it had some potential to crash stuff. It would drop down in the middle of the city among a whole load of buildings, and the buildings had grown too fast, too quick. It could have caused crashes. Now, as a result of testing it outside of that area in a place where it is isolated, we can see what issues there are, we can work out what those issues are, and we can then work out how to bring that sort of content back into the main area. The majority of things that we do have to be seen with a context of, we want to do this across the whole app, across the whole map. There is no area of Infiniverse that we want to be lonely, boring, just a building and just a green piece of grass and a concrete flat slab. That is not something that we aspire to in any way or form. We are looking and constantly looking to how we can take, for example, a test of the New York City textures that we placed around the New York City that had been created, and we put that out there to see what happens. It's not next to a hub. It's not at a key entrance point to the app where if it was causing crashes, everybody that appeared there and walked through that door would see a crash. It was in an area we could test it with some regulars, with people that we know and trust us, and that would inform us of the problems that occurred. As a result, that Our intention is 100% to roll out that texture to a wider area, to multiple areas, and to find different textures to roll out to different areas, so that the whole of Infiniverse has its own unique feel. I think I mentioned it earlier, but a biome, an area where you've got a set type of trees, a set type of buildings, a set type of environment and locale, potentially even districts and ways that we can make the districts solidify. All of those things are part of what we're constantly working towards. And even though it might not be clear when we do a drop of a certain nature, there are many different considerations that we make when choosing both where and what to place. That is a key part of it, and do expect this stuff to be rolled back into the rest of the app and across the rest of the world into a way that makes it that is stable, hopefully, and preferably makes everything more beautiful and more interesting.
Yeah, I think as well, one of the things that I know somebody has been mentioning is there are a lot of people who were there right at the very beginning who managed to get sneak peeks at the Tooniverse, for example, and other areas that were under development, and that kind of really solidified a goal or a direction and kind of drove excitement for a lot of people who've initially joined. And we don't do that so much anymore, and I know that's a lot to do with the fact that you need to actually develop the app and you don't have as much time as you used to. And one of the suggestions was to kind of do mini tours periodically of the stuff that's in development. I know we just have like a handful of things, but for new users, that's really interesting. And I know San and I recently had a chat about this, and we thought maybe there could be a potential for me to periodically host these in your stead. But we need to figure out, obviously, it's still just limited to 12 people, and we need to figure out how do we do an event that drives people to come join to have a sneak peek at stuff. If only 12 people can, do we tell them after a certain period of time, please leave so someone else can join? Or do we control that in some way? And we need to figure that out.
The world of all the different things we've done R&D on is vast, as you guys have probably seen, the ones that have been in some of the tours, and we have some crazy places. However, one of the suggestions I think from Wendy was that Mrs. Cummings, is that we put together a room that links to some of these locations. And while that's great, the only concern that we have is that new users might end up there without any context, and then they might find an empty Tooniverse town with nothing working in it and nobody there to explain to them why they're seeing that, which would obviously result in a negative feedback for them. So it is about having somebody like a dev take them on that tour, somebody that gives them the opportunity to experience something that is special.
Yep. So maybe if Chris could give me some special perms, maybe I could kick people out after a certain time. You know you want to.
List on.
Yeah, on the list.
That does that, then I'll never be able to talk to Chris in app. He'll just always kick me out.
Yeah, I can see that. So somebody asked a question of, can you kind of, I mean, again, on the point of new people who aren't getting that experience, who didn't see that from the beginning, they also aren't really aware of what your long-term vision for this app is. What are your goals? And to somebody who's just joined or to somebody who's recently got involved, give them an insight of what the Multiverse app is, where you want to go with it, and maybe, if possible, some steps that you hope to take together.
You or me, Chris?
Shall I have a go first?
You go first.
So, I guess a good way to start is to talk about what our original visions were and what our inspirations were. And I mean, yes, the honest answer is we climbed on the bandwagon of let's create a metaverse. I don't like saying let's create the metaverse, because it's like nobody created the internet, but there were people at the center of it that made it happen. And we are facilitating the creation of what is currently people refer to as the metaverse. I suspect in the future people refer to just as the internet, which is a vast, interconnected I guess, universe of an immersive experience that connects thousands or millions of different experiences together. Some of which will be gamey, some of which will be stores, some of which will be blogs. Don't know. I mean, it's such a vast thing to describe that it's hard to nail it down to one thing. But I mean, my original inspiration for why I wanted to make some of the bits of Infiniverse work the way they do was reading books like Snow Crash, and I think the thing that I always came back to with books like that is one person or a small set of people had created a system that could connect spaces together and had a lot of functionality and allowed people to do a lot of different things. And then it was the people that used it that created the actual spaces and made it do things that were never originally envisaged. And I mean, that's what the internet is, right? Like, when people first started, when the first web browsers came out, nobody pictured the fact that Discord is running in my web browser right now, for example. I guess, yeah, that's the path we're going on is the immersive internet, if you want to call it that. I mean, some of the technologies I envisage bringing in are things like controlling environments with JavaScript down the line. Then some of my favorite moments in game development over the years have been when I've written technology and given it to a designer or an artist, and they've come back to me and shown me what they've done with it, and I've said, how the hell did you do that? And I almost want to achieve those. I'm more interested in achieving those moments than ones where I set a path. And is that a nice vague answer that really answers nothing specific?
Yeah, good job, Chris. Good job.
That's good. I think the key thing for me is, if you look at what the internet is today, it is a collection of links between experiences and content and people. And that is something that is extraordinarily powerful. And upon that, you've built, and I say you, the world has built Amazon, Facebook, Google Maps, all of these amazing pieces of technology. And they've done that by extending that concept of taking some very simple thing and saying, wow, how can we take that to the next level? How can we connect more people? How can we interact with more people? How can we give them a new experience? And our goal is to create the platform that lets everybody else do that. I don't see it as our goal to create the content. We do. There are things we create. There are statues we drop. There are Zombie Town gameplay levels that you can play. There are experiences you can have in the planetarium. But that, in a sense, is about incepting what is possible for everybody else to be able to take up and do. And our goal is to create the world that lets everybody else do it. Because if we've got to do it, there's no way you can recreate the internet. I mean, that's not possible for a small team of people, even a big team. The internet is the internet because it's everybody. It is humanity getting together and doing something insane and crazy and massive and stupid and silly and bonkers. And I think that that's what we want this to be. We want this to be a place where all of you can take up the reins and to do the things that you pioneers and leaders and visionaries can make it with it. Whether it's Sherry and Woman's World, or whether it's Alliance City, or whether it's, I don't know what, the Art District, or a billion other things that people have already done in there. The creativity and the passion of individuals that are not us are so much more than just us. And that is what drives us. That's what makes us excited. That's what makes me and Chris and Nikki and Wendy and all of the rest of us go into the app and every now and again just have our jaws drop and say, oh my God, what have these users done now? Look at that. That's nuts. And that's where this world is going. Again, we create the platform, we hand it to you, we accept the ideas, we give you the tools. And yes, some of them are broken and some of them aren't working properly and some of them need fixing, but those are there for you to take and run with. And that is part of the value generation. It wasn't a single individual company that created the internet and then created the value of all the web pages on it. Those were the individuals that took ownership of those web pages. Google and Amazon are great examples. They sat upon the tools of the internet and they created the industries of today and tomorrow. And we see those people in that crowd in front of us right now in that list of audience. You guys are the ones that are going to do that. You guys are the ones that are going to take this crazy, stupid thing that we've created and link it up in ways that we've never even imagined, put together stuff that we never even thought of, and find ways of turning this around and making it insane. Selling stuff, showing stuff, connecting stuff, meeting with people, we love that. That is the most powerful reason for us to get up in the morning and go to work. And I think that's what we want to see you guys take the reins up on, and that's what we want to help you take the reins up on with. So talk to us, let us know, and work with us to see those results.
Just to add on top, I think a thing that means a lot to me is because we're a small company and we're starting out, well, not starting out, we've been doing this for years, but we're growing something in this way. Unlike some of the really large organizations that might approach this, we are not looking to own the metaverse. We are looking to facilitate it. And we believe with a passion that it's something that, imagine the internet could never have happened. Fundamentally could never have happened if somebody was trying to own the internet. That I believe that, at my core, that San and I, we definitely do want to make a profit, don't get me wrong, but we want to do that by enabling something huge that is everybody's, and we'll probably enable other people to do things that are more successful than we are, and if we do, we'll be proud of that.
We'll support it. We'll cheer it on.
Exactly.
We'll make them more money and more success.
Exactly.
Well, that's exactly what we want to do.
I think as well, from what I've seen, is the experimentation, the creativity, and the gap or the missing link that you guys need is what spurs development that progresses the app forward as a whole. Like, for example, we will put something out that we didn't expect to be appealing or have appeal or grab or interest. Like, for example, the canyons. Within seconds, we were being told about the canyon success. And then an entire industry is formed in a canyon. And that's the kind of crazy stuff we didn't expect. And that could spur features that we need to invest in.
And Sam basically sat me down the other day and said, "Chris, I will never talk to you again if you damage those canyons." I spent 2 days testing the new terrain stuff, just making damn sure that those canyons stayed canyons.
Exactly.
I think, I would have had a very angry producer if I damaged those.
Not just a producer. I think you'd be eaten alive by Bryce. Like, Bryce Canyon.
I think that might be true.
Yeah.
So, good news, I haven't. They are still there.
But that's also one of the things that is so fantastic about the product that we're making, because yes, it's a product that we create, but it's not even a product that we entirely create, because it is dynamic. It is programmatically generated. It is developed by us, but to do things that we don't necessarily expect. And the canyons are one example of that. And the knock-on of that is amazing. And we'll see that only expand and continue as we continue to do different things in different areas and across different topics with the app. So that, I see that as, the real power here is giving the power to other people.
Yeah, I mean, they're actually a really good example. I mean, they're a simple but good example of canyons. They weren't deliberate. They fell out naturally of the terrain generation algorithm and how it interacted with cities at the edge of the map. But now, purely serendipitously, we know that people like them, and we know that that's something we should aspire to in the future, is making sure we get features like that. It's a great example of how this process is working and what we mean when we say we're working with you to build it.
Yeah. And on that point as well, I just want to kind of remind people that there are intentions from my side specifically to formulate an ambassadors group, a community ambassadors group of selected, vetted people who are open to do a two-way conversation with us, to periodically meet, and for us to hear viewpoints of stuff that we've put out or things that are needed, so that we know from these people, from this focus group, what kind of stuff we should aim towards. I mean, this by no means means that everything that's requested is going to get done, because we are, as we've said, limited by the people we have, the tech we have, and the systems we have to work with. But having that platform and that forum to discuss between you guys and ourselves will help steer the direction of, hey, this canyon happened, we really liked it, and then this unique thing happened and we really think it would help. And we can also explain why we are doing things in a certain way. So that's something I plan to do from my side. I also think for one important topic that has been raised that I need to remind is, when are we going to work on NFT integration of the apartments? And also just to highlight the thing that Mark Zuckerberg said recently that also kind of supports everything we're doing.
I don't have a fixed date for you guys. I can't honestly give a time that it will be done. I don't like doing that unless I know it for a fact, because it's just dishonest. I mean, it's not in the too distant future. We're looking at starting on the work soonish. I see there's two quite separate features to do with NFTs in my head. I mean, there's a million different things we can do with them, but there's two areas that I think both have a lot of value. One is allowing people to link, for example, their Ethereum account to their Multiverse account, so that we can get a list of what NFTs they own, and then allow them to display those NFTs in their apartments, or even display the NFTs of other people in their apartments, or in storefronts, or pull them out of their risk menu and them have little holograms of authenticity or something on them to show that they are genuine. I think that in itself has real power, because it will help people who own these NFTs popularize them. It will be another place for them to advertise them, So yeah, I mean, that excites me. I'm not sure. I mean, I think we'll try and. I'm not sure which chains we'd initially hit with that. I think we'd probably launch with one, and expand it. Yeah, that's the natural way you would do something like that. The other side is obviously the one that I think, when we start talking about making real direct revenue from buying and selling properties, is minting the properties as NFTs. That's still very much the goal. I haven't quite nailed, I think, in my head the correct technical approach to it. But I think ultimately we will end up with a system that allows you to say, I want to take this property that I currently own in the metaverse, that I bought from Future Tech Labs because it was a fresh thing or some other way, and now I want to turn it into an NFT. And once it's been turned into an NFT, its ownership is managed 100% by that NFT. We will probably hit the common problems that a lot of these systems have, of like, it's very hard to securely allow you to trade those NFTs in the app. So would you initially only be able to then trade those NFTs outside of the app? And that would kind of make player-to-player sales tricky. But most people would probably be uncomfortable with us storing private keys to allow transactions in app. So do we need some way of storing them on the device to facilitate that?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of details in making that work well. But that core plan is still very much there. I don't quite know the technical implementation of it yet.
I think the thing to point out as well is it's not just you who doesn't know the technical way of doing it. Other people in the same position, even Zuckerberg himself, don't quite know. So it's not just an our app related thing. It's an industry wide thing.
Nikki,
I can say one thing.
He's the one saying what even Chris doesn't know.
Oh yeah, exactly.
What I will say is that, and I am happy to say this. Unlike certain companies, we are not intending to create our own blockchain and excluding other people from using it. Just saying.
No,
Just saying.
We're all
That's not what it's about.
Yeah.
I mean, the key thing there is the platforms. And if you're looking to create a metaverse, then that metaverse has to be available across everything. The internet isn't only on iPhone. And I think that's a really important, concept to get ready for, is with all of these things, we need to expand onto other platforms, we need to support other technologies, and we need to do that in a way that means everybody here feels very much like the pioneers because they were in early, they had opportunities nobody else had. And when the exponential growth happens that inevitably comes from those things, we all are there at the ground and we're winning.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm more confident in your guys' abilities than some of the other ones I've been around, and I've been in and out of a number of apps for a while, number of different companies, and I think comparatively you have a solid plan in terms of where you aim to go, and you're open to how you're going to get there rather than being so inflexible and so rigid. For example, it must include this and it must include that. You are very much focused on adapting to what the community needs, and I think that's a very rare thing to find. A company that's willing to learn from the demand of the community and not the other way around.
And their mistakes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the key thing.
On that note, there is something that it might not seem obvious, and I know that people don't always believe us, but when Chris and I and the team talk about how we are going to be successful, it always, every single conversation, it involves how do we make our consumers and our users and our community successful. That's it. It's not about how we achieve success. It's how we achieve success for you. Because if you're successful, we will inevitably be successful as a runoff. That is how the internet works. That is not how most of the other big boy companies think. And I think that that's one of the big differences. And it's one of the ones that I became very clearly aware of in the last couple of weeks. I can't go into much on detail of what's happened in the last few weeks. But what I can say is that I have a huge amount of confidence in what we are doing. I have a huge amount of confidence in the direction that we're taking. And I have a huge amount of confidence in that we are doing something entirely unique.
Yes, exactly. And I also think as well that the thing that you kind of focusing on as well is not just a quick win situation. You're thinking about long-term, sustainable, reliable experience.
Yeah. It may not always seem it when either our server crashes because too many people come in or we accidentally launch something that we shouldn't have. But that is a consequence of the early days of being agile. And agility does bring with it a certain amount of risk, and that will inevitably backfire every now and again. But the end goal really is something where we want you to succeed. And we are here to build that tool, and we're doing it as quickly and as agilely as possible.
On the topic of listening to the community, one of the things that came out of, for example, the joke apartments was a real interest in the props that people got to play with. Many people really enjoyed throwing around hamburgers and controllers, and they want to know, will apartments be getting props?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my fault. It's my fault they didn't, to be honest. I'm pretty sure San said, let's put some in loads of times. And I was sort of like, don't bother. It's basically how that happened. So yes, they will, because people love them. So we will be adding them.
Same question about the parks. People really loved the park when it came out, even though it wasn't coming out when we wanted it to. People loved that park. Will there be more parks outside of the village?
Yeah. We're not going to populate every park with an identical park like that. But as we said, I think at the start of this AMA, the purpose of writing that and designing that system was not just to design that park, but it was to write the code that allowed the procedural generation of little grassy areas with a path going across them, or areas with a central bandstand, or areas with trees, or areas with crisscross paths going across them. And we'll be expanding those in some areas a full-on park, and other areas just a pleasant grassy area to be inside a city across the world.
Mm-hmm.
We will, I suspect, pick initially one of the less populated cities to test the expansion of them into one area that's more busy. And once we prove that works, we'll expand it across the world. I'm nervous to suddenly drop them into, say, Grand Central, because as anyone who plays it knows, Grand Central is already chuggy, let's say. And I don't want to make that problem worse without testing it properly.
Will the parks include like park-based facilities, like a bandstand or a pond, fishing pond, or as someone saying an amphitheater? Will you have like park-like facilities?
Sure, we'll go down that path eventually. I really want to put squirrels in though.
Oh my god! Why specifically squirrels and not pigeons?
Just like squirrels.
I think the idea here is very much, we are looking, how do we bring these things across the whole app? We're not looking, obviously, with the individual drop, a unique drop, we're not going to suddenly take a unique drop and put that in 500 places across the map, because that's not cool. But when it comes to things that are technology based, like parks, that's the whole point of creating them. That's the whole point of testing them out. That's the whole point of putting them in, is so that we can put them in more places.
Mm-hmm. I think someone just made a very good point. I think this point came up before at the marina. Can they have, in these unique marina and park-based areas, the opportunity to buy like a stand to sell things?
Yeah, that's very on the list. Very, very on the list.
Nice.
Yeah, ultimately.
Awesome. And one of the other questions that I'm being harassed is, will there be pubs? My God. So many people asking about pubs in the last few days.
That's fine. We just got to talk to Ollie, because if we get Ollie involved with the idea of a pub and a pub night, quiz night or something like that, then pubs will just happen, as will tea. So
I just saw Becca write pub templates. I love that.
I would quite happily host that. I'm good with pub quizzes. I'll be down for that. You make me a pub, and I will make an event where I will host a pub quiz at least once a month.
I think we just need to put you and Ollie in a room and give him a weekend.
Oh,
yeah, that's pubs and things like. I mean, not specifically pubs. I can't say yes to that, but that sort of concept, that idea of a social space, whether it's a pub, or whether it's a cafe, or whether it's a restaurant, or whether it's a disco, or a cinema, or a theater, or whatever else it is, bandstand. Those are absolutely elements of what makes a social app social, and again, tools that let the community create content and excitement. So yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I'm super eager to have more things that we can interact with. I think that at the moment is one of the topics that came up a lot when people have been referring to, hey, when are we going to have more ways to socialize, more way to interact beyond just walking around and standing in the streets talking? And I think a while back we were talking about things like concert halls and sports stadiums, but I think we start small and work our way up rather than throwing in the big things straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the time. Although sometimes we just throw in the big thing anyway.
Just see how it goes.
Yeah. Well, adding 100,000 square kilometers to the world, for example.
And creating sinkholes.
Just for anybody who's searched, shortly Christopia will be surrounded by a moat. Just wanted to say that.
It's just to be extra special.
Yeah.
Another question does come up quite a lot. It's come up again. Saw it already twice today about expanding the shard, the amount of people. We spoke about that previously and extensively in a previous AMA. Those AMAs are available on our YouTube. Please go back and have a listen. Essentially, we're limited by the technology that we have. We don't want to blow out people's headsets because we're filling it up with too many people all at once. We're just waiting for the new tech, and technology is developing very quickly. So go back, have a read of that AMA. Let me just have a look, check through what other questions I've been getting coming through. Okay, I don't specifically know how to understand this, but can I ask about synchronicity? Is there a way of a video playing in a store that will sync to everybody in the room? I get it. Yes, exactly. Because I know that issue happened specifically with the joke room. We had that in the comedy club where people would be entering and they'd be getting it playing at different times.
Yeah, the intent is just we were originally we started off with a debate as to whether or not which way is best, and then whether people should have a way of choosing whether things should be synced. But I think we will, in the not too distant future, just make it that videos are all synced by default. The only exception there is I'm not certain that's actually technically possible with YouTube videos at the moment. If it is, we will do it, but that's tricky, that area. But certainly videos that are streaming that have been uploaded to our servers, yeah, I mean that's the plan.
Yep.
Or at least it was the last time Sam and I discussed it, unless he's changed his mind.
I never changed my mind.
You never change your mind about anything ever. I just want to take the opportunity to highlight a few things that have come up question-wise for the last few days. As a result of the update recently, people who are using Link are experiencing their screenshots upside down. Correct me if that's incorrect, Chris, but that is the reason. You're aware of it, right?
Yes.
Good, thanks for that, Chris.
Yeah.
I know Ollie is, at least, and Ollie explained it was a result of the update. So we are aware of it is going to be fixed. I don't know how soon it will be fixed. The same.
We'll look at that soon.
Same thing is the cause for people not being able to watch videos in the cinema when they're linked. We know about this issue. We know that if you're playing on Oculus Link, you won't be able to watch videos, and we're trying to get it fixed. I don't know the ins and outs of why. Maybe Chris does, but it's something that I know it needs work.
Yeah, I got back 3 days ago, so I think we need to spin over these issues. I'd be lying if I tried to comment in too much detail on them.
Okay.
Right now.
Right. So we have got 2 minutes left. I'm going to pick one more question, and I think it will come from. Let's have a look. There's a lot of questions. Can you pick one, San? Is there anyone in particular that you want to answer? Because there's a lot of them.
I've been focusing on what we're talking about. I haven't been watching the...
Okay, then there's the one that came through that I knew that we were meant to answer. Store analytics. Do we have plans?
Yeah. So I've talked about that quite a bit before, and I want to reiterate that. The analytics is an important thing. We understand that, but there are limitations to it, and there are problems that occur. So a little bit like how I mentioned earlier with the wrist menu, there were certain technologies we built that broke because of how the app expanded exponentially. The same sort of problems occur with analytics. Chris did a whole load of work in R&D a few years ago about, everything from up to, seeing how long an individual image is being looked at. But those technologies break as we continue to expand. I think you'll be able to expect analytics around the end of our pre-beta beta period as we go live, because at that point we will have a relatively stable application and we won't be in a situation where we implement something that breaks and then we have to fix it, and then it breaks and then we have to fix it, and then it breaks and we have to fix it.
Yeah.
And that concept, there's quite a few features that fit inside that realm of, well, we could do them now, but we would be doing throwaway work because in the future the app's going to change, and therefore the work that we've done is going to be broken and we'd have to redo the work. So there are some features like analytics, which we understand are extremely important, but we're not going to be doing until a later point when it's more relevant.
Mm-hmm. Good. I'm glad we remembered to mention that, because I know it was something that was extremely talked about recently, and giving a little bit more clarity on the direction of the storefronts is very important. So before we log off, I know a couple of people are talking about being able to control kids. We did mention about a two-way block feature. That would help with that. So if you block a child, they won't see you. Not that I'm encouraging people to go around and mass block children. The idea is we're a community. We'd encourage them to come and visit some of the other ones. I personally distract them with dinosaurs. Works really well. But I know people have a tolerance. So this two-way blocking should help with that. Okay, so that is all we have time for. These will again be happening frequently. I'm assuming I'll arrange another one very soon. And when this AMA ends, I'll put the recording up on YouTube for those who miss it. If you do have any more questions that we didn't answer that you really need an answer to, just continue to put it in the AMA chat and we'll keep an eye on it. If anything like really urgent comes up, then I'll try my best to get back to it. But until then, thanks Chris, thanks San. Your insight is always invaluable, and I appreciate you coming to answer the questions.
Cool.
Thank you.
No problem.
Right. Have a good evening. Bye everybody. Toodles.
Bye-bye.